If you're at all like me, by which I mean that your second biggest gripe with the world is that we're about a quarter of the way through the 21st century and still have yet to invent commercial-grade jetpacks, flying cars, or air speeders, and your main gripe is that everyone keeps trying to put you in a monotonous box, then you've likely fantasized about being some form of swashbuckling space cowboy, mercenary, or something else of that nature. However, before we all go running out to put a down payment on a blaster and jetpack combo, we need to take a step back and really take a good long hard look at what we're really signing up for. First, and most obviously, just what is a bounty hunter? Put simply, it is a person contracted to find and detain the body of an individual in whatever state the client specifies, usually in the capacity of extrajudicial law enforcement. Basically, if a police force wants to arrest someone outside of their jurisdiction, they might hire a private contractor to cross those lines and do so on their behalf. Thus, a bounty hunter is to search and retrieval operations what a private investigator is to information gathering. So now we have a question. Just how broad or limited do we want our professional capacity to be? Well, to my mind, a sci-fi bounty hunter would be the spacefaring equivalent of a fantasy adventurer, which I've conceptualized as similar to a historical ninja. Basically, a general-purpose special operative for hire. A jack of all trades, master of whichever prove the most profitable and or interesting to the individual. And as though to add a point of legitimacy to my theory, Star Wars actually has a canonical bounty hunting guild. So where do we, as complete novices, begin on our hopefully very lucrative soldiery paths? Well, just as for the adventurer, the place to start is general survival and travel skills. After all, in both professions, you have to go where the money is. However, the nice thing about the bounty hunter is that there's infinitely many places for an interstellar rogue to hunker down in space, unless they're setting use as hyperlanes or something for FTL. And this would be absolutely vital to such a character, to have a series of bolt holes or hideouts where he can go, rest and lay low for a while, which would mean he'd also ideally have a network of connections that could get him out of a jam if needs be. Just ask John Wick, James Bond, or Agent 47 how invaluable it is to have a team of extraordinary supporting players around you. In essence, trying to fight the world alone is stupid. It doesn't matter how cool or skilled you are, sooner or later you're going to have to sleep, and when you do, you want to be surrounded by people you trust absolutely. So step 1, cultivate a network of contacts. These can be everything from your personal agents, who'll do everything from finding you contracts to selling you gear to getting you valuable intel, to general assets you meet along your adventurous path, arms dealers, gang members, government or corporate insiders, smugglers, etc. Or of course, if your setting permits it, you could also either buy, salvage, or build a robotic companion, or several, to be your personal entourage. And the nice thing about this option is that again, depending on what the technology of your world and your wallet permits, a general-use android can be programmed and modified to fill just about every need and role imaginable, up to and including a hunter's more personal needs. But in any event, remember this always. You have no friends, you have only assets and liabilities. Every person you bring into your life is both a potential benefactor and a potential leak. And now, remember this too. You are a hunter, not a time bomb. You're here to do work, not to exfoliate every world you see. So, step 2. As a wise politician once put it, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. This is where the dueling expressions, don't F with crazy and F around and find out, come into the picture. Make yourself well known as a dangerous but fair predator. Keep in mind, you've chosen a path that'll always be, at its best, just this side of legality, and morality's gone on a lifelong pub crawl, so there's no use in even waiting up for it here. Nobody wants to work with a loose cannon, nor will they willingly pay for something they could just take off your corpse. After all, you're hardly the only fish in the sea, and as an independent contractor, you're several parsecs away from being the biggest. Plus, your clientele may very well be making the same asset liability calculation that you are, and no matter how valuable your services, you're still another mouth they might want to keep from flapping. So it always behooves you to have a few extra backup plans stowed up your proverbial sleeves, preferably with some dead man switches attached. And here's where we finally get to talk about the fun part. Sort of. It seems to me that if we're going to go so far as to liken bounty hunting to adventuring, then would it not also stand to reason that sci-fi mercs should have their own classes and roles, similar to those in a fantasy adventuring party, or, Literally any modern military. I'll answer that for you. Yes, it does. So until someone with more authority or education on the subject tells me otherwise, this is the logical vector I will be working on going forward. And since going over each and every possible permutation of outlaw and scoundrel would drag this video out into the 41st millennia, I'm going to cover this in the 4 broadest strokes I think are possible. First and most obviously are the secret agents, the infiltrators, the Splinter Cell, Metal Gear Solid, Ninja Kingsmen. By far and away the most famous and popular character prompt for a private gun, and it's not hard to see why. Picture James Bond, Agent 47, Star Wars HK-47 and IG-88, among others, Dishonored's Corvo Attano, Overwatch's Widowmaker, and so many more that I could dedicate a whole separate channel just to listing them. Basically, we're looking at the sci-fi fusion of every archetypal flavor of rogue fantasy has in its garage. The soundless thief, the charismatic bard, the worldly ranger, the sleek assassin, and so on and so forth, often with elements of super soldier tomfoolery thrown in for added spice and lethality. These operatives specialize in covert infiltration, and as such are generally non-combative if they can help it, though they can still absolutely throw hands and win if the situation calls for it, and will almost certainly do so with the aid of an assortment of mission-tailored tools. Number 2. Mercenaries. The generic free-range hunter-killers of a setting, the common soldier of fortune. The underworld's equivalent of stormtroopers, by which I mean they're slightly more skilled and technologically advanced than a random street thug or bandit, but hardly well enough to be a threat to a main character, especially not one with a lightsaber. Naturally, this is the class that most people will tend to think of when they picture a vigilante or rogue in a sci-fi setting, and consequently make up the most commonly exemplified across the genre. Basically, your bog-standard do-anything freelancing grunt. These guys usually come as part of a package set, and are often functionally indistinguishable from a regular military unit, apart from the fact that their only cause is their payday. Third is what I like to call the OMAs, or one-man armies. Think of your Mandalorians, your Samus Arans, your Battletech bounty hunters, etc. Essentially, they're the sci-fi version of a hedge knight or Ronin, a masterless living weapon with enough private ordnance to their name to solo entire military divisions. More often than not, they're equipped in some sort of legendary suit of armor, have all the best, or at least biggest, weapons and war gear their settings can proffer, and usually carry either a tragic backstory, honor code, secret personal mission, or some combination of the 3. Fourth and finally, we have the mastermind, the mercenary or pirate captain, the Nate Ford, the Moriarty, or what have you. Though the rarest of the 4 types to see in the wild, especially on the protagonist side of the screen, when they do appear they are the heart and spine of their organizations, for without them there would be no cohesion, no order, and thus no money. And at the end of the day, the money's what it's really all about. You'll have noticed there's no mention of specialists like doctors, hackers, demo men, snipers, or even lawyers or bankers in the above list. Why is this? Quite simply, it's because those are all basic utilitarian skills that every competent soldier of fortune should be at least somewhat versed in before setting out on their self-serving journey. This then brings us neatly back around to the most important question of all. Is it better to be a specialist with a particular set of skills or a generalist, competent at all, master of none? Well, the simplest answer is yes and yes. The slightly longer answer is, if you're going to be part of a crew, similar to an adventuring party, or a private arms company of some sort, you'd be best served by taking full advantage of labor distribution, gathering teams of assorted experts in specific fields, with some more general aptitudes shared between you to help fill out your ranks or to plug any non-obvious or non-specific gaps. The trade-off to this distribution, however, is that experienced talent tends to know its worth, and unless they're really down on their luck or down for your cause, they're generally going to expect to be compensated accordingly. On the other hand, a band of high-functioning generalists may be lacking in the trump suit department, but they're also going to be that much harder to overwhelm since they lack a readily exploitable vulnerability or blind spot. Ultimately, the correct solution to any problem is whatever works, which is where we finally get to the part you all really clicked on this video for. Just as in fantasy settings where magic can, and often does, serve as the writer's and the character's get-out-of-jail-free card, advanced technology can cover most gaps or deficiencies in a sci-fi crew's skill or talent sets, their DPS, or even their sexually and logically perverse armor configurations, which is where your classic arsenal of spy gadgets come into play. But equally as important is our mode of transportation. Have you ever seen a successful space pirate without a suitable space vessel? No, I didn't think so. Now, the question is, what makes a good freelancing transport? Well, at a bare minimum, it obviously needs to have enough room for the crew, their provisions, their weapons, and most importantly of all, their bounty. Beyond that, things get considerably more debatable. Are you the running gun style of pirate? The type to storm into fortified installations through the front door, or else just structurally engineer your own out of AP bombs and missiles? Or do you prefer the more tactical approach involving advanced sensors and cloaking tech? Again, ask your nearest sleazy space junkrat which collateral option is right for you. But in the grand scheme of things, pretty much everything I've said up until now is entirely dependent on just how civilized you mean to be with your approach. If you're just looking to be the biggest, baddest gun on the black market, then I'd suggest you look for a fictional universe with portable nukes or battle mechs. Or if you don't have a death wish, I'd recommend partying up with a band of like-minded scoundrels, preferably in a ubiquitous space tugboat, something that can easily blend into any harbor or spaceport in the galaxy, that's rugged enough to tank a few odd hits or sit comfortably out in any environment, and versatile enough to unflinchingly swallow whatever mods or upgrades your quirky mechanic could graft together using some spare bolts, Mod Podge, and flex tape. Otherwise, you're going to get steamrolled by the first Federation, Imperial, or Star League task force that gets sent your way. Like I said before, a notorious reputation can serve you well, but it can also get you on the worst people's radars if you fail to exercise judicious caution in your target selection. Basically, what I'm saying is, don't go out of your way to make a nuisance of yourself if you want to live long enough to retire. But having said that, to quote my own personal OC who has much experience in the ways of cosmic predation, in a world where the sheep are tended by lions, a lone wolf should not make plans to grow old. And with that, we once again must bring our time together to a close. Hopefully, you took something worthwhile away. If so, then consider leaving a like and subscribing, becoming a channel member, and/or checking out my books on Amazon. And until next time, as always, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, there are no stupid ideas, only stupid people, and the difference lies in the execution of the former. Peace be upon you.